I think we've now got the message. So I think now it's time to say to these individuals two things. First of all, we get the message. There are a lot of choices that you're trying to impose on other people that, in fact, now you've got your message out there, let them decide. It's not your decision. Let them decide how it's run. The second point is that we have laws and rules about disruption. And I think if you see people gluing themselves to the streets, you kind of have to look at their intelligence. And if they're that thick to do that to themselves, how clever and bright are they in terms of advising the rest of us on how to live our lives? And the last point is that we do live in a democracy. So if you feel that strongly about these issues, why not make them public, put yourselves to the ballot box, and then get elected. And if you get elected, then you can change the rules and the laws. I'm sick and tired of these people getting in our way, causing more trouble, forcing us to do things that we haven't necessarily decided to do, and getting in the way of freedom of movement and speech. We're trying to recover from a pandemic here, and we have a bunch of people who seem to think that their agenda is more important than anybody else's. Well, I've got news for you. Lock them up.
Well, James, you're saying that we let us decide. They should let us decide. But Henry, they're deciding to help us. They're saying it's a climate emergency. If we don't act now, terrible things will happen in the future, and some not great things are happening right now, actually.
Well, they don't have a crystal ball. I mean, the global community of scientists have told us that we need to get things down to 1.5 degrees above pre-industrial levels in terms of, the rising temperatures, because otherwise we're going to get rising sea levels and then humanity will face catastrophe. And David Attenborough has been saying that only this morning, and he'll be saying it at COP next week. The big problem is it's not government talking tough, it's how the police respond to these people operationally if they glue themselves to the street or if they run out in front of traffic, etc. And because the police seem confused, not seem to be able to respond immediately, drivers and passengers are taking it into their own hands. And my concern is that drivers will get so frustrated, in the end we're going to see serious injury or even worse if they continue driving into some of these people who are sitting down and they think they're doing maybe God's work, and you're sitting there very calmly and piously. They think they march with the spirit of Dr. King. Well, they don't. I think you're kind of right. The message is broadly understood. These things cannot be done overnight. Human beings have been living for about 200 or so years since the Industrial Revolution. It's going to take some time to wean ourselves off. And some countries are moving much more quickly than others. But you can't just stand in front of ambulances and trying to deliver people to hospital, or people trying to get their parents to urgent cancer treatment and say, sorry, we love you, but you're just collateral damage.
The unintended consequences of some of those things is so appalling and so awful that I think, look, you're right. That the danger that these people could cause either to themselves or indeed to others by running out and doing all these things, as opposed to finding an interesting and new way to let us know. Because ultimately, this is down to, first of all, a lot of what they're asking won't necessarily make much difference. And that's what I have a real problem with, is that they're wanting to push their own agenda, which is not necessarily based on proper science. And then some of the science is it's good would should.
Well, James, you're saying they should be locked up, and there's a good chance that could happen now.
Good.
Just yesterday, Grant Shapps, the Transport Secretary, instructed National Highways to apply for an injunction over all strategic roads, and that now has been granted from the High Court, meaning they could face jail if they protest on any A road or on a motorway.
One thing that concerns me very quickly is some of the people who've been putting themselves up as spokespeople for Insulate Britain and other campaign groups. When you look at their own lives, they're not practicing what they preach.
Yes.
They're not insulating.
Too right. I agree
and the
with
cars
you.
they're running and driving, when they're saying, well, I just can't afford to, but I still think it's important for me to get the message across. No, practice what you preach then if you want us to judge.
And maybe don't glue yourself
Well, it's the same
to the road,
with the celebs.
particularly your head.